I want to pick up with where we left off whenever we last met. What was that, Thursday? On page 644 of book 4, I believe. Yeah. The black gate is closed, and it's that passage that we kind of ended with, where the narrator's telling us what Frodo is essentially thinking. And the top of the page begins with the name of the place that they're headed to, Cirith Ungol. Okay? And the narrator says, Gandalf and Aragorn would have warned them, steer clear of this place, etc. And then we get this long passage about Frodo and what Frodo is thinking. And the paragraph ends, and here he was, a little halfling from the Shire, a simple hobbit of the quiet countryside, expected to find a way where the great ones could not go, or dared not go. There's a big difference there between they could not go or they dared not go. It was an evil fate. What does fate imply?
Someone else decided for you.
Okay, what else?
You don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice, you're predestined. Okay? No matter what you do, this is what's going to happen. But he had taken it on himself in his own sitting room in the far-off spring of another year. In other words, okay, so is it really fate? Did he have to choose to go the previous spring when he and Gandalf were talking? Did Frodo have to say? Not what he said, but, did he have to say, I'll take the ring, I'll leave the Shire because I want to preserve the Shire? No, he didn't. After all, he did offer it to Gandalf. Won't you take the ring? Gandalf said no. So remote now, that is the far spring of another year, so remote now that it was like a chapter in a story of the world's youth, the Silmarillion, when the trees of silver and gold were still in bloom. These are trees that Tolkien goes into great detail in the Silmarillion. These are the trees of Valinor that light the world. This is before the sun is made. Okay? This was an evil choice. What was an evil choice? Notice, it was an evil fate. ... This was an evil choice. Notice the two oppositions that Tolkien sets up there. Is it fate or is it choice? Or does fate just sometimes look like choice? Okay? Think of it this way. Frodo's going on along his own life, okay? That's down here at this level. He makes a choice, he makes a decision, and what happens? The road splits, right? Okay? He makes a decision, he decides to go off this way. This choice is forever then gone. He keeps going on along, he makes another choice. He decides to go off this way. This choice is forever then gone. Okay? But as he's making those choices, how much can he see? How far ahead can he see? How far ahead can any of us see? We can't. We can't even see a second ahead. We think we know what the next second will hold, or the next minute, or the next hour, or day, or week. Not many of us tend to go beyond that, really. Okay? But we don't really know. Okay? That's from our perspective, right? As we live our lives, we take each day kind of one step at a time. Is there another way of looking at that choice? This is where the Boethius material kind of comes in. How about from up here, looking down? From up here looking down, which we can't do. We can't get out of our own skins. We can't look at our life from birth to death. We only see it from birth, what? To the present. We don't see it after that. The older we get in the present, I'm 54, a year from now I'll be 55, 10 years from now 65, 75, 85. We get to our deathbed, and then what can we do? We can look back on our life. But even then, can we see it from this perspective? No. Because what don't we see? We don't see how at every one of these little points in our lives, for example, we interact with people, right? You interact with people every day. You might not talk to them. You might be in your car most of the day. You are interacting with people because you're driving a certain way, and sometimes other people don't like how you drive. How do you know you're interacting? They give you a symbolic finger gesture or something else. Okay? That's interaction. Might not be of a nice personal sort, but it is still interaction. We don't know what that interaction does to that individual or to that other person. And we don't know what that interaction does to that individual and how they then interact with somebody else. Okay? But from this perspective, each of these little points, looks like a thread. Our perspective, the threads are all frayed because we don't see how they all come together. This perspective, however, gives us what? It gives us this. We see, not a tapestry, but it's the closest I have, we see the tapestry that our life is woven into. Our life isn't a tapestry in and of itself. Why? Because our life is a single thread. And each of your lives then gets kind of woven in and out of the threads of my life. Two, from this perspective, again, this is the Boethius material. From this perspective, which ultimately, according to Boethius, is God's, does what? Creates a masterpiece. But that masterpiece, in our daily living of it, as my son told a woman at our church last night, we did a 40-day memorial for my mom's death. Life sucks. 14-year-old, that's a pretty, jaded perspective on reality. Life sucks. Okay? Why? Because he's talking about this experience of it, not this experience of it. Frodo thinks, first, it was an evil fate. Fate is looking at it from this perspective, but not this far up. Okay? Boethius essentially says, here we go about our lives down here, but then there's something else at work. Keep in mind, Boethius is writing in the 500s. Okay? You have fortune, not a fortune like a bunch of money, but chance. Okay? But they didn't think of it as chance like, it's the roll of a dice. Fortune was a goddess. According to Boethius, it's fortune that controls everything that happens on earth. So you have fortune ruling here. What's behind fortune? Fate. That is, fortune can't trump fate. Fate always trumps fortune. Okay? But then Boethius, and this is where the consolation, the solace that philosophy provides him comes. Philosophy teaches Boethius, behind fate there's something else. God. Okay? Look at this within the language of the Lord of the Rings. What power is working on the ring to get the ring back to Sauron? Sauron. Okay? Sauron put most of his power into the ring, so the ring is trying to get back to him. I think it's kind of safe to say That's kind of like Sauron. Sauron is kind of the ruling power of Middle-earth. It's not Gandalf. It's not Aragorn. It's not Elrond. It's not Galadriel. You have the White Council to counter Sauron. But even all told, all together, they can't. They're not enough. Sauron is the controlling power. Okay? But then what's behind that? Well, both Gandalf and Elrond say, but there is another power at work. Is it fate? Well, look at the language Frodo uses here, or Frodo thinks here. It was an evil fate. Gandalf says, you were meant to have the ring. Does Frodo interpret that to mean I was fated to have the ring? I think he does. Why? Because Frodo doesn't know God. Frodo doesn't know Eru Iluvatar. He doesn't pray to Eru. Eru is essentially absent from this world. If you want to put it in modern terms, he'd be like a deistic god. Winds up the world, throws it off out into space and says, sayonara, you're on your own. You work it out. Okay? So what Tolkien creates in The Lord of the Rings, some people have tried to say, oh, it's this Christian world. No, it's not. It's not a Christian world. It is a pagan world. When people die in despair, they die in despair. When? Not all of them do. Okay? But I think when Gandalf says there is a power behind the intention of Sauron, I don't think Gandalf is referring to fate because of who Gandalf is. He's referring to Eru Iluvatar. Big or, possibly Manwë, the chief of the Valar, who's nothing but a representative of God, which is why I would take it ultimately back to this. So, it was an evil fate. It was an evil choice. Either way, notice the modifier. Evil. What's going on in Frodo's mind? What's he thinking? I'm screwed. I'm screwed.
Pretty much.
I mean, again, put it in our world language. Let's say for the moment you all accept the Christian myth. And I don't mean myth to mean that it's false. I mean story by that. Who does the ring belong to in our world? Satan. You really want to have something that Satan, really, really, really wants back? No, you don't. You would much rather drop it in somebody's purse, put it in their backpack, give it, let them follow them. This was an evil choice. That is, his choice to leave the Shire? No. It's an evil set of options. What were Frodo's options, let's say, back here? What could he do? I could keep the ring. I could try to hide it. Okay. Sauron's looking for the Shire. He probably knows the name of Baggins. What eventually is going to happen? Okay. Bad idea there. I could take it and leave. I could take it to Rivendell. Yeah, there's a good idea. Elrond will protect it. They get to the Council of Elrond? Not such a good idea. What are the choices we're given at the Council of Elrond? Throw it in the ocean. Does that destroy it? Nope. Something's going to spit it back up eventually. Give it to Tom Bombadil. He'll be dancing off in the forest and flick it off into who knows where, and it'll eventually be discovered again. That's not a choice. Send it to the Valar over the ocean. It's not their problem. They'll send it back. That's not a choice. So he has two choices. Keep it or destroy it. There is a third choice. What is it? Use it. We're told in Council of Elrond, not a good choice. It is a choice. Okay, so a little 3 foot, 2.5 foot tall Frodo's gonna say, "The ring is mine, Sauron, come and get it." You know, what's Sauron gonna do? He's gonna come and get it.
Yeah. Squash him like a bug.
Yeah, squash him like a bug. Okay? What does Frodo mean? This is an evil choice. This is how my son feels.
It's the perfect.
He gets to vote for the first time. Okay? He'll be 21 at the end of February, but he was born, the wrong year. Who are his choices to vote for? His perspective. Who does it look like it's liable to come down to? Trump and Hillary. Maybe Bernie. Really? Is that the best we can do, America? Out of 330 frickin' million people, the best we can do on the right side, the Republican side, is Donald Trump? My God, if that's the best we can do, we are screwed. We are lost as a nation. And if Hillary or Bernie Sanders are the best we can do on the left side, we're even doubly lost. Okay? That's the evil choice he thinks he faces. Well, what is the third choice that he has that Frodo doesn't have? Well, you cannot vote. Not voting is an act of voting, however. It just means you're giving your vote to somebody else. You're making somebody else's vote count twice. Do you want somebody's vote to count twice for Bernie Sanders or for Donald Trump? I'm talking November. We've got the primary election. You can vote for whomever you want at this point. Frodo doesn't have the option of not doing anything because Sauron ultimately wins. This was an evil choice. Which way should he choose? And if both led to terror and death, what good lay in choice? What good does it do to choose if you still die? Wow. What is Tolkien asking?
Should you just give in to despair?
Should you? Do you just give in to despair? You just throw up your hands and say, we're screwed, that's it?
We all are.
The American experiment failed.
Everyone dies.
And that's a theme that is recurrent on this television show that I mentioned the other day, Person of Interest. You've got these people who keep saying, hey, you know what, at the end, everyone dies. Which I think, because the show's been canceled, or it's ending after its 5th season, which starts, I think, in the fall. All the major characters, are they going to die? Because that is a theme that's been introduced sometime beginning in the 3rd season. Is this bleak, pessimistic outlook? Okay. So, everybody dies. So what do?
Do the best you can while you can.
Do the best you can while you can. What does Gandalf say to Frodo? When Frodo says, I wish it need not have happened in my time. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Who doesn't? But those wishes are like unicorns and fairies. It means nothing in the real world. So, get over the little wish fulfillment desires, and then do what? Put on your big boy, big girl pants and
What you can.
do what you can. Okay? Even if it means terror and death. Well, in that show, Person of Interest, there's one scene where one guy is telling another guy, you're right, and we're probably all going to die. It doesn't mean we stop. Okay? There's an old English poem Tolkien was very familiar with. He actually wrote a little article on it called The Battle of Maldon. In the Battle of Maldon, the poem recounts an actual historical event that happened in the year 991. A small group of Englishmen battled a much larger group of Danish Viking invaders. But they didn't have to. Okay? Where the Viking invaders landed, there was a river. And in the middle of the river is an island. Okay? You could only get to the island when, this is a tidal river, when the tide was down. And when the tide was down low enough, it revealed a little passageway that one person could walk across at a time. In other words, single file. Okay? The English leader, because the English are on the island at this time, the English leader foolishly gives the Danes permission to cross over. Okay? The Old English poet uses the word overmode to describe this decision. Okay? Overmode means kind of super spirit, super mind, super courage, or over if you want. So if you have too much spirit, if you have too much courage, if you have too much mind, what's another way of putting that in modern English usage?
Cocky.
Cocky, overconfident, pride. This word is only used throughout Old English literature to describe one other individual. One other individual. It's used a couple dozen times, if I remember correctly. Satan. The only other place it's used is to describe Satan. And it's used to describe the British leader, a guy named Byrhtnoth. Okay? Because of his overmode, he allowed the Danes to come across, and the Danes slaughter him. Every last one of the English died. But towards the end of the poem, after Byrhtnoth lies dead, hacked to pieces, his men surround his body. Okay? This is good Germanic heroism. His men surround his body, and this old grizzled warrior says, as our strength lessens, that is, as our numbers get fewer and fewer and fewer, the keener and the stronger must be our courage. As our numbers dwindle, our courage must get greater. Why? Because what's it eventually going to come down to? Our numbers are going to dwindle till there's one person left. How courageous does that one person have to be to fight the oncoming hordes of Danes? He better have a lot of courage, because it's easy at that point to say, I surrender. But in Germanic, Anglo-Saxon, heroic fashion, there is no surrender. Even in the face of certain death, there is only fighting to the end. And we still see this in modern, popular culture. Watch the Firefly film Serenity, if you need an example of it. Okay? Yeah, I haven't seen The Revenant.
The Revenant is that all over.
Okay? It's this Old English heroic idea, which infuses this. Notice, though, here, Frodo's asking, what good? What good lay in choice? What are the two options? Roll over and die, and give the other side what? Certain victory, or stand and fight, and give them what kind of victory? If you die. Most likely. Most likely isn't what? It's not certain. It's like being mostly dead. You're not dead. Okay? What does Gandalf say about despair? He has no counsel for those who despair. Why? Because despair means out of hope. See, having 99% despair is not being full of despair. It means you have 1% of hope. And 1% is still 1%. It's like the old adage, where there's life, there's will. As long as the body's still breathing, it's not a corpse. Once it's a corpse, It's gone. The day drew on. A deep silence fell upon the little gray hollow where they lay, so near to the borders of the land of fear. Do you think that has anything to do with why Frodo is thinking the way he's thinking? I mean, look at the difference in the United States between pre 9/11, post 9/11. Pre 9/11, we kind of tended to think we're untouchable. We've got these two wonderful big bodies of water protecting us. We've got Canada to the north, and everybody knows Canadians are nice, wonderful, soft, fluffy people. They would never hurt us. And we have Mexico to the south, and we don't really need to worry about them. 9/11 happens, and what bubble is burst? This untouchable Fortress America bubble. Okay? And now, what largely governs so much of our politics? Fear. Fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown terrorist. Fear of the unknown terrorist activity. Fear of the unknown in terms of what's going to happen with the world economy. Fear of the unknown in terms of who's coming up from the southern border or who's coming up from the northern border or down. They stay there for a while. They realize the riders, the not school, are about. Page 645. Sam says right in the middle of the page, the riders are about again, up in the air. I saw them. Do you think they could see us? Frodo, no, but their steeds could see. Okay. The feeling of dread passes. They hear a sound. A new fear was upon them. Notice, as long as they stay close to Mordor, what is going to be their dominant emotion?
Fear.
Fear. Old English word for murder, just by the way, Mordor. It's the land of death. They hear singing and hoarse shouting. What do they see? They see Sauron's soldiers. Okay? They go and march south, since they realize we can't get into Mordor by the gate. And Gollum says he does know another way. They march southwards. Chapter 4 of Herbs the Stewed Rabbit. They reach the land of Ithilien. Sam takes a look at Frodo and notices, man, he's looking thin and gaunt. I need to put some meat on him. So he has Gollum do some hunting. Gollum comes back with a brace of rabbits, a couple of rabbits. And then Sam asks him, go find some carrots and potatoes and other things. And he builds a fire. Is it smart to build a fire when you're on the borders of Mordor and you have Sauron's minions looking for you? Not quite so much. Okay? So they fall asleep, they eat their stew, and they get captured. Pick up with 657. Faramir captures them, and he tells them, I am Faramir, captain of Gondor. There are no travelers in this land, only the servants of the Dark Tower or of the White. Meaning, there's no neutrality here. You either serve Sauron or you serve Denethor. What would he say to Aragorn, who serves neither? Because he's above the one and he's trying to conquer the other. So, Frodo mentions, not necessarily who he is and what he's doing, but he talks about the fellowship. And he mentions Boromir by name, top of 658. Faramir, Boromir, son of Lord Denethor, you came with him, that's news indeed. And he says, and do you know what Boromir's business was? And Frodo mentions the lines from the vision that Boromir had. And he says, and we're the halflings. And Faramir goes, okay. And Isildur's Bane, what does that tell us Faramir knows? Not necessarily, not yet. he knows the rest of the verses. Because the rest of the verses mention, the halfling and Isildur's bane. Okay? And what is Isildur's bane? Frodo, that is hidden. Doubtless it will be made clear in time. Faramir, well, we must learn more of this. You guys are coming with us. And so he takes them to Osgiliath to take them to Denethor so Denethor can pry the truth out of them, right? No. They go on for a while and they get ambushed. Page 660, 661. Sam goes off, joins the guards, and he sees a glimpse of swarthy men in red running down the slope, with green-clad warriors leaping after them. Arrows thick in the air. And suddenly, right over the little hollow where Sam is sitting, a man falls, nearly on top of him. He came to rest in the fern a few feet away, face downward, green arrow feathers sticking from his neck below a golden collar. His scarlet robes were tattered. His corselet of overlapping brazen plates was rent and hewn. His black plaits of hair, braided with gold, were drenched with blood. His brown hand still clutched the hilt of a broken sword. Notice the detailed description Tolkien gives us of this guy. He's described like a Germanic warrior. His hair is plaited and has gold beads in it, or braided, and has gold beads in it. He's wearing a mail shirt, okay? He has a gold neck ring, what's called a torque, around his neck. It was Sam's first view of a battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. He was glad that he could not see the dead face. He wondered what the man's name was and where he came from. What is Sam doing there? When he starts to wonder, what is this guy's name? What is he immediately doing to this person who had once been an enemy? He's humanizing him. He's not just an enemy. He's someone who had a name. What else? He's someone who had a home. And Sam wondered if he was really evil of heart. That is, was he rotten inside? Or what lies or threats had led him on the long march from his home? What lies by those in power over him, or what threats to him, or possibly those he loved, drew him from his home? And if he would not really rather have stayed there in peace, all in a flash of thought which was quickly driven from his mind. In other words, in that instant, in that moment, Sam thought of this individual as just another poor slob who got tricked, possibly, forced, possibly, or rhetorically persuaded to go off on this battle to defend the fatherland, the homeland, the motherland, etc. There's a Roman writer by the name of Tacitus who wrote a book called On Germany back in around 100 AD. And Tacitus, in that book, he's describing the Germanic tribes and the Germanic peoples for a Roman audience. He's kind of using it to satirize Rome at the time, because Rome was pretty decadent. And so he's holding up these German tribes as models of heroism and decency and everything. And he says, the Germanic tribes, when they go into battle, they go into battle full bore, whole hog. Okay? And he says sometimes what happens is they'll march into battle and their women folk will stand up on a hillside so all the warriors can see them, and they'll bare their breasts. And they'll essentially say, "This is what you're fighting for, boys." Meaning, if you don't win, what's going to happen?
Something
We become their slaves. Your wives, your daughters, your sisters, your mothers become sex slaves to the victors. Kind of gives an incentive for the men to do everything they can. Okay? You kind of wonder if Tolkien's thinking it. Tolkien knew Tacitus very well because it's an important source for Germanic custom and culture. And then suddenly they see the elephants. Okay? We get chapter 5. They make their way off to the window on the west. And page 664, Frodo has mentioned Aragorn and his ancestry. Okay? And the sword that Aragorn bears. And the men say, the sword of Elendil comes to Minas Tirith, great tidings. This is like Excalibur? Excalibur back to London? See, we can't imagine what this is like. But this would be like somebody claiming to have the real Excalibur and being Arthur and coming back to London. Or maybe a better example would be, we don't have a name for his sword from biblical sources, but it would be somebody arriving in Jerusalem and saying, I am the heir of David. And here's my genealogy. All the way down the line. You know, for an Orthodox Jew, it would be the Messiah returning and saying, and I'm here to clean house. So, Frodo says, Boromir was satisfied of Aragorn's claim, etc. And he essentially says, can you guys just leave us alone and let us go on our way? We've got an important job to do. Faramir. So you say all will be made clear when Boromir returns. So you're a friend of Boromir. Frodo, yeah, for my part. Then you'd be sorry to learn that Boromir's dead. I would grieve indeed. And then Frodo suddenly realizes Boromir's dead. What's the first thought in his mind? If Boromir is dead, everybody else is dead. Boromir was a great warrior. If Boromir is dead, then the others must be dead also. I mean, he leaps to that conclusion. How did he die? Frodo asks. And Faramir's like, I was hoping his friend could tell me. Okay. So Sam, getting fed up with Faramir's questioning, says, is it all right to talk to you like that, Mr. Frodo, after all you've gone through? See here, Captain. And he plants himself squarely in front of Faramir. Faramir probably stands, I don't know, 6'2", 6'5", big, brawny, burly guy. And Sam's about 2.5 feet tall and maybe that much wide. He's lost some weight now, but... And he says, see here, what are you driving at? Let's come to the point before all the orcs of Mordor come down on us. If you think my master murdered this Boromir, then ran away, you've got no sense, but say it, and have done. Then let us know what you mean to do about it. It's a pity that folk has talked about fighting the enemy, can't let others do their bit in their own way without interfering. In other words, we're fighting the enemy too, let us go on. And Faramir's thinking, you're a couple of midgets, what are you going to do? Okay. Faramir essentially tells Sam to shut up. So they talk a little bit more about Boromir. And Faramir describes what he saw when Boromir returned to Minas Tirith in the boat. The broken sword on his knee, the horn. And page 667, Frodo tells him, we came through the Golden Wood. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whenever Faramir saw Boromir in the boat and everything,
Mhm.
I was confused as to whether it was actually like a dream or if it was real life.
No, it's real life.
Okay.
How do we know?
The horn was returned.
The horn is returned. When Pippin meets Denethor, Denethor sits on his throne with the horn of Boromir, the cloven broken in two, horn of Boromir on his lap. Okay. So, next page. And in fact, top of the next page, Faramir says this. And now the horn of the elder son lies in two pieces upon the lap of Denethor. Okay? Frodo, I didn't know. But from your reckoning of what you're talking about, the day Boromir died was the day we left the company. And so he says, will you not put aside your doubt of me and let me go? I am weary and full of grief, and I need to go faster, and afraid. I have a deed to do or to attempt before I too am slain. Notice how he puts that. I have a deed to do or attempt what? Keep going.
Or
dead.
Before I am slain. What is Frodo saying will be the end result?
He's going to die.
I'm going to die. I've got something to do or to attempt to do, but I am going to die. What's going on in Frodo's mind? What's the dominant emotion or attitude?
He's resolute. He wants to-
Resolute? Okay, it's one way of putting it. Resolute against what?
He's determined now. He's decided finally that he's going to
Okay,
keep going on
he's going to keep going on until.
until he's dead.
Who's dead?
So what's he think's going to be the end result? He's going to die. Is that hope?
He needs courage,
Yeah.
technically.
It's courage, but is it hope?
No.
I mean,
Hope is tomorrow I'll get up and go on with my life. He doesn't have hope that he's going to live through this. He thinks whatever's going to happen, I'm a dead man or hobbit. Okay? In the more need of haste, if we two halflings are all that remain of our fellowship. Now look at his next sentence. And this, I think, tells us Frodo is almost at the point of despair. Go back, Faramir, valiant captain of Gondor, and defend your city while you may. And let me go where my doom takes me. Doom. What does that mean? Judgment. Where my judgment takes me. Okay? Go back, defend your city. Not open-ended. He doesn't just say go back and defend your city. While you may. What's that while and may imply?
Or you still can.
But,
But you're going to die too.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to defend it forever. And Gandalf's going to tell us that in the chapter called The Last Debate. He's going to say, you know, here are our options. We can fortify Minas Tirith, which is what you've been doing for the last, thousands of years. But even that will fail. And he's going to say, I don't counsel strength of arms. Why? Because strength of arms, military might, will never overthrow Sauron. Faramir, for me there is no comfort in our speech together. In other words, he doesn't say, come on, Frodo, suck it up. Come on, break into Little Orphan Annie. The sun will come out tomorrow. No, it won't. Not while Sauron reigns. But you surely draw from it more dread than need be. In other words, Frodo, you're assuming because Boromir is dead, all the others are dead, and therefore what? The quest has already failed. Unless the people of Lorien themselves came to him, who arrayed Boromir as for a funeral? Faramir applies a little logic to the situation. Boromir didn't dress himself in his funeral bed. He didn't stack all the weapons on. In other words, somebody put him in that boat. Somebody stacked all the weapons on. Somebody put the cloven horn in his lap and pushed him down towards the falls of Rauros. Yes?
That's what I was gonna ask. Is how did he make it over Rauros? Was there some kind of like elven magic going on that like kept all this
Probably.
stuff on him?
Yeah,
Because that doesn't make any sense.
probably. Not orcs or servants of the Nameless, some of your company, I guess, live still. See, Frodo immediately assumes they're all dead. Aragorn is dead, Legolas is dead, Gimli is dead, Merry and Pippin are definitely goners. So he says, but whatever befell on the North March, you, Frodo, I doubt no longer. In other words, I take you at your word. Okay? So he says, we got to keep going. We haven't reached the window on the west yet. And they keep marching. And he tells them as they start to march on page 669, I broke up our speech. Why? Because we were getting on some thin ground. Isildur's Bane, you were not wholly frank with me, Frodo. I told no lies, and of the truth all I could. I don't blame you. I learned or guessed more from you than your words said. You were not friendly with Boromir, or you didn't part in friendship. Isildur's Bane. And he goes on, and what does he do? He knows his brother. And so what does he assume about Boromir? Isildur's Bane might be some form of weapon. If it was a weapon, Boromir would have wanted it. Frodo, yeah, pretty close. Not in the gold, that is, you're not a bullseye, but you're pretty close. Okay? And he apologizes for pressing Frodo about Isildur's Bane. Okay? And they keep talking, and they talk about Gandalf. Page 671. Faramir's voice drops to a whisper. He doesn't want the possibility of any of his men overhearing this. What in truth this thing is, I cannot yet guess. That is Isildur's Bane. But some heirloom of power and peril it must be, a fell weapon perchance, devised by the Dark Lord. If it were a thing that gave advantage in battle, I can well believe Boromir the proud and fearless, often rash, ever anxious for the victory of Minas Tirith and his own glory therein, might desire such a thing and be allured by it. Alas, that ever he went on that errand, I should have been chosen by my father and the elders. But he put himself forward as being the older and the hardier. Both true. Okay, Faramir admits, Boromir is a mightier man than I am. And he would not be stayed. The vision comes to Faramir first. About seeking Imladris. And then he says this, but fear no more. I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. I was walking down the road and it was laying there and it said, Sauron's fell weapon. He says, I wouldn't pick it up. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin and I alone could save her. So, that is thus, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory. Why not? Why wouldn't he use the weapon of Sauron to defend Minas Tirith? Because Faramir realizes using anything that once was Sauron's would taint whatever victory one achieved. What does that word taint mean?
Wouldn't be worth as much.
Yeah. What do you do when you tint paint? You get pure white paint and you tint it for a color, like these walls. You drop another color in, and what does that do?
Changes.
It slowly, unless you mix it up quickly, it slowly spreads. Does it ever stop spreading? No. No. That victory would be tainted. It wouldn't be pure. And what would happen over time? The whole victory would be undercut and corrupted. I do not wish for such triumphs. Neither did the council, nor do I. Okay? Faramir says what he would like to see. They get to the window on the west, and Sam kind of blurts out about Sauron's ring. Page 680. And he realizes, oops. And then he turns to Faramir, bottom of the page, and says, now you look here, sir. Don't you go taking advantage of my master because his servant's no better than a fool. Handsome is as handsome does, we say. Now's a chance to prove your quality. This is like Frodo and Sam and Galadriel at the Mirror of Galadriel. Galadriel, when Frodo says, you are powerful and wise, will you not take the ring? And Galadriel kind of, goes all weird on him, and she transforms into this dark, powerful mistress of the night, as it were, and says, no, not really, just plain old simple Galadriel, and she'll go off into the west. Faramir, the one ring of Sauron, and it falls into my hand. Alas for Boromir, it was too sore a trial. How you have increased my sorrow, you two strange wanderers from a far country. We are truth speakers, we men of Gondor. We boast seldom and then perform or die in the attempt. That comes straight out of an Old English poem called The Wanderer. It's also in Beowulf. This idea, don't boast until you know what situation you're going to come up against and you can fulfill that boast. Not if I found it on the highway would I take it, I said. Even if I were such a man as to desire this thing. What does he say? My oath would bind me. What does Peter Jackson do to Faramir? Completely emasculates him. He takes this aspect of Faramir's character and throws it out the window by having Faramir forcibly take Sam and Frodo to Osgiliath to be taken to Denethor. Completely changes everything Faramir is and stands for. He turns Faramir just into a minor version of Boromir, and he's not. Okay? But I am not such a man, or I am wise enough to know that there are some perils from which a man must flee. That is, you don't take on every battle. If you're an alcoholic, and you have two routes to go home, and one route takes you by the bar you used to go to every day, what does a smart alcoholic do?
Go the opposite.
Go the other way. Okay? Sit at peace, be comforted, Samwise. If you seem to have stumbled, think that it was fated to be so. In other words, this was meant to happen. Okay? It may even help the master that you love. It shall turn to his good if it is in my power. So, they capture Gollum. Faramir looks into Gollum's eyes and says, there is evil there, but not evil soon. He's not going to kill you himself, so to speak. And they go to the crossroads. They're making their way on. They're several days now past having left Faramir and his men. And they come to this crossroads. Page 702, last page of the chapter. Where did I put my mark? Crossroads look like this. Okay? You got Mordor over here, and way off in this distance, you've got the sea. Okay? This is the road leading north up to Gondor's over here. The road leading south to Far Arad. Okay? And you've got the mountains over here. They come to this crossroads. And we're told, standing there for a moment, filled with dread, Frodo became aware that a light was shining. He saw it glowing on Sam's face beside him. Turning towards it, he saw, beyond an arch of boughs, the road to Osgiliath running almost as straight as a stretched ribbon down into the west. There, far away, beyond sad Gondor, now overwhelmed in shade, the sun was seeking. So, the sun is dropping down into the sea, and its rays are shining through this archway created by the tree boughs. The brief glow fell upon a huge sitting figure, still and solemn as the great stone kings of Argonath. The years had gnawed it, and violent hands had maimed it. Its head was gone, and in its place was set in mockery a round, rough-hewn stone, rudely painted by savage hands in the likeness of a grinning face with one large red eye, the eye of Sauron, painted on it. So Frodo sees this big sitting figure of a king, head lopped off, and then he looks on the ground beside it, and he sees the head. And the sun keeps setting, and its rays hit the head. Frodo saw the old king's head. "Look, Sam," he cried, startled into speech. "Look, the king has got a crown again." The head has wound around it a circlet of flowers, and the sun shines right on them. Okay? This is an example of what Tolkien calls in the fairy story essay a eucatastrophe, a sudden grace never to be counted on to happen again. Why is this a sudden grace? What does this do for Frodo and Sam? It's hope. It's hope. Tolkien goes on to describe this. It is a glimpse of joy, joy beyond the confines of the world. Why? Because it shows there is not universal final defeat. In the fairy story essay, what he's talking about there is ultimately good will prevail. And he links it to the Christian story. Okay? The eyes were hollow, and the carven beard was broken, and about the high stern forehead there was a coronal of silver and gold. And Frodo says, "They cannot conquer forever." Who's the they? The darkness, evil, Sauron, orcs. And then the sun sets, and it's black. Notice, it's not just twilight. It's not like the sun setting here today, where it gradually gets darker. Because what's happening? Sauron is on the move. Like in the Chronicles of Narnia and Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, when Aslan is on the move. Okay, there's a difference there. Everything, spring comes kind of slowly and then accelerates. Here, sunset, boom, it's pitch black. Notice when that happens. Right after Frodo says, "They cannot conquer forever." And then the lights get turned out. Little glimmer of hope? Yeah, but it's just a glimmer.
Page is this on?
702. It's the last page of chapter 7. Then we get the stairs of Cirith Ungol. Okay? And Gollum says, we have to go. So they go on. And they go up the stairs. They go up the stairs, and they go up and up and up until they reach a passage where they stop. And Frodo says to Sam on page 711, I love this. Sam says, "I don't trust this place. I don't like anything here. I don't like the air even." And Frodo says, just after the middle of the page, I don't like anything here at all. Step or stone, breath or bone. Earth, air, and water all seem accursed. But so our path is laid. Okay? You remember what Frodo said when they got to the dead marshes? He asked Gollum, how do we shape our path? In other words, their path wasn't laid there. They had to figure it out. Frodo here is saying, but here, this is how our path is laid. We don't have a choice. We've got to follow the yellow brick road, as it were. Okay? Sam, yes, that's so. And Sam becomes literary critic at this point. And we shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started. Mr. Frodo, if I were a right smart hobbit, back a year ago, I'd have said, hell no, Mr. Gandalf, I'm not going with Frodo. Not if we end up there in that Cirith Ungol. In other words, if I'd had all the information I needed to make the proper decision, I would have said, see you later, Mr. Frodo. Have fun storming the castle. But I suppose it's often that way. The brave things and the old tales and songs, Mr. Frodo, adventures, as I used to call them. I used to think, notice, before his experience taught him, I used to think that they were things the wonderful folk of the stories went out and looked for because they wanted them. That is, Beowulf went off and fought the dragon because he wanted to. Beowulf went off and fought Grendel because he wanted to. King Arthur fought all those battles because he wanted to. He wanted to get the glory, as it were. Because they were exciting and life was a bit dull. Kind of a sport, as you might say. But that's not the way of it. With the tales that really mattered, or the ones that stay in the mind, folks seem to have been just landed in them, usually. What do I mean? Harry Potter discovers on his 11th birthday. Your parents didn't die in a car wreck. They were killed by the most powerful dark wizard who ever lived. And he's after you. He just found himself in that story. Folks seem to have just landed in them. But I expect they had lots of chances, like us, of turning back. Only they didn't. Where did Frodo and Sam have chances of turning back? They could have stopped at Crick Hollow. Okay? They could have stopped at Tom Bombadil's, possibly. They could have stopped at Rivendell and said, it's not our problem. You high and mighty ones, you figure out what to do with the ring. We're just simple little hobbits. But I expect they had lots of chances, like us, of turning back, only they didn't. And if they had, we shouldn't know, because they'd have been forgotten. If they turned back, what would have happened to the stories that were told about them? They wouldn't have been told. Think of the American Revolution. If the Redcoats had run, we wouldn't know about any of those stories of quote-unquote American patriots. We wouldn't know about George Washington crossing the Delaware. We wouldn't know about Washington's army in Valley Forge. We wouldn't know about Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. We wouldn't know Benedict Arnold as the name and the ideas that are connoted with it today. Because Benedict Arnold would be a hero. No. We hear about those as just went on. And not all to a good end, mind you. At least not to what folk inside a story and not outside it call a good end. I mean, Hamlet. Hamlet doesn't die well for Hamlet. Or Hamlet doesn't end well for Hamlet, the character, in that he dies. It doesn't end well for many of the characters within the play. King Arthur, the story, doesn't generally end well for Arthur. You think Arthur, if he had an opportunity, if he could fast forward to see the end, would say, maybe not. Maybe I'll go this direction rather than that direction. You know, coming home, this is how Sam calls the ending of a good story for someone inside it. You know, coming home, finding things all right, though not quite the same, like old Mr. Bilbo and Sam. That describes Sam's end of The Lord of the Rings. Sam comes home. Is everything quite the same? No. They've got to clean up the mess of the Shire brought upon it by Saruman. But what does Sam get at the end of the story? Very last page. He comes home and what does he discover? there's his wife waiting for him at the entrance to Bag End, welcoming him in. Nice warm firelight flowing out of the window. She sits him down in his nice big chair, puts his little daughter in his lap, and that's how it ends. Sam gets the vision of the happy ending that he thinks stories ought to end with. Good stories ought to end with. What's Frodo's happy ending?
There's no one to him.
Middle Earth, marriage, children, glory. He destroyed the ring. Nope. His happy ending has got to be found with the elves and the gods out in Valinor. In other words, he saves Middle Earth, but not for himself. What's the happy ending of Galadriel? Elrond. They leave Middle Earth. It's a bittersweet ending. It's not a happy ending. Because all the wonderful things that they wrought with the rings of the elves comes to an end. When Sauron's ring is destroyed, all the good wrought by the other rings is also destroyed. Sam goes on. But those aren't always the best tales to hear, though they may be the best tales to get landed in. We'd like to be in that kind of story, but are those always the stories that move us the most? Aren't we moved by stories where the hero dies sometimes at the end? I mean, the most powerful scene in that first Star Wars, A New Hope, is what? Is it the destruction of the Death Star? No. It's when Obi-Wan Kenobi looks and he sees Luke, and Luke yells, "Obi-Wan!" And what does he do? He pulls up his sword and lets Darth Vader kill him. Because what has he said? Strike me down, I shall become more powerful than even you can imagine. Okay? But we don't want Alec Guinness to die there. We want him to go on. I wonder what sort of a tale we've fallen into. Sam's starting to think here. Mr. Frodo, our tale can go one of two ways. We all die. Or maybe some of us live and we get the happy ever after. We get the Disney ending. Tolkien hated Disney, by the way, because of what Disney did to fairy tales. How Disney changed fairy tales, like Cinderella, for example.
The dark story.
Yeah. Frodo, I wonder, but I don't know. And that's the way of a real tale. Take any one that you're fond of. You may know or guess what kind of a tale it is, happy ending or sad ending. But the people in it don't know. Why not? Because they're like that drawing I put up earlier. They're here living their life. We get the bird's eye, the God's eye view of the story. They don't. How many of us know what kind of story we're in? None of us knows when our end comes. God forbid it should happen, but we could be one of those schools, one of those days, one of those hours when somebody goes off the rails and comes in with an automatic and kills everybody in a classroom. You can bet those 32 students at Virginia Tech 4 or 5 years ago never thought it would happen to them, or the students at the Umpqua Community College never thought it would happen to them, but it did. They weren't thinking about what kind of story they are in. Frodo, and you don't want them to. Why not? Would you really want to know right now that 32 minutes and 45 seconds from now you would be dead and there was nothing you could do about it? No, sir, of course not. Baron now, he never thought he was going to get that Silmaril from the Iron Crown and Thangor Rim, and yet he did. And he was in a hell of a lot worse place than we are now. But that's a long tale, of course, goes on past the happiness into grief and beyond it. And the Silmaril went on and came to Earendil. And Sam suddenly has an aha moment. My goodness, Mr. Frodo, we're in the same story. The Silmaril that Beren cut from the Iron Crown of Morgoth in Thangorodrim was given to Earendil. Earendil used it, and Earendil has been made into a star. And you have some of the light of that star in that file that you have around your neck. We're in the same story of Beren and Luthien. The great tales never end. Frodo. No, they never end as tales. And this gets at Tolkien's whole thing he talks about in the fairy story and say, we're all just one huge, long tale. We each are just kind of characters in the story. Which implies, if there is a story, what must there be? A storyteller, an author. They never end as tales, but the people in them come and go, and when their part's ended. Our part will end later or sooner. Why or sooner? What's this telling us about Frodo? Yeah, he's not fully full of despair, but he's getting close. Because look at what Sam says. And then we can have some rest and some sleep. Sam's not talking about the euphemistic, oh, they've fallen asleep in Jesus. He means real rest and real sleep. When we finish, oh, I'm so tired. He can go to sleep. And I mean just that, Mr. Frodo. I mean plain ordinary rest and sleep and waking up to a morning's walk in the garden. What is in the back of Sam's mind?
The Shire.
Sure.
The Shire, home, Rosie Cotton. Sam has someone to live for. Does Frodo? Other than Bilbo? Not really. Why not? Is Frodo just a confirmed old bachelor and always to remain one? Okay, possibly.
Maybe the ring does something weird to people.
Okay. Or it could be Frodo was never meant to have that. Sam, afraid that's all I'm hoping for all the time. And it's that keeps Sam going. To wake up one morning back in the Shire and to go for a walk. To walk out his front door, through his little garden, and to go for a walk. What describes Sam's ideal life?
Simple.
Wealth, power, prestige? Simple happiness. Somebody posted on, and then my sister shared it on Facebook the other day, something about wanting a mediocre life. There's an article about wanting a mediocre life. And my sister-in-law said, I agree with this, but I don't like the word mediocre. Because we tend to think mediocre means below average, like it's crap. Okay? Maybe wanting a simple life. That is what Sam wants. Why? Because he's a simple person. Does it mean he's stupid? No. It means he doesn't want more than he really needs. Okay? And he goes, and then our tale will get put into songs. We're in one, of course, but I mean, put into words, told by the fireside, read out of a great big book with red and black letters. You can get The Lord of the Rings with great big red leather covering. Let's hear about Frodo and the Ring. Frodo says, Sam, you're getting beyond yourself here. Why? Well, because we still have about a third of the novel to go. And Frodo's thinking, how does it end, Sam? Okay. And they realize Gollum is gone. And Sam's like, I wonder what Gollum's role is. Bottom of 713. I think he really is in part, Frodo says this, trying to save the precious from the enemy as long as he can. Okay, if Gollum is really in part trying to save the precious from the enemy, then on whose side is Gollum? Okay.
Well, I guess in a way he's on Frodo and Sam's side.
Okay. Sauron is evil. If he's trying to stop Sauron from getting the ring, what side is Gollum in part on? It's got to be the other. It's got to be good. What does Luke say to Darth Vader in episode 3? There is still some good in you, Father. I can feel it. Does Darth Vader say, no, you're wrong, kid? No, he doesn't. He says, it's too late for me, son. One of the things Tolkien is showing, I think, in Lord of the Rings, it's never too late. That's why Gandalf says, I have not much hope that Gollum will find his cure before the end, but there is some. Okay? And they realize Gollum is gone. They fall asleep. Several hours go by, and we get this description. Gollum comes back. Okay. Where has he been, by the way? Yeah. He's been setting off the ambush with Shelob. Okay. So he's been treacherous. Gollum comes back, and he sees Frodo and Sam. Sam sitting there, back against the wall. Frodo lying on the ground, his head in Sam's lap, and his hand on Frodo's head or chest, I can't remember. One lay on Frodo's forehead, the other lay on Frodo's chest. And Gollum looks at them, and we're told a strange expression passed over his lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and gray, old and tired. Because they go grim and gray, old and tired, how are we now supposed to see Gollum? As Gollum? As Smeagol. Meaning? As an old, weary hobbit. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him. He turned away. He peers back up toward the pass that he just came down from. Shakes his head. Why does he shake his head? Not good. Not good. He's arguing internally. I shouldn't do this. And then he came back. And he puts out slowly a very trembling hand. And he cautiously touches Frodo's knee. But the touch was almost a caress. Why does he touch Frodo's knee? Why not any other part of Frodo? Foot, hand, arm, head, chest, stomach. Why the knee? I think Tolkien is specific here for a purpose. In classical literature, one way of trying to secure mercy from somebody else is to go up and either put your hand on the person's knees, put your head on their knees, or clasp your arms around their knees. For example, in the Old Testament, when somebody goes to get a blessing from another person, they put their head on that person's knee. Okay? In the Aeneid, a character goes up to Aeneas, I think the character's name is Turnus, begs for mercy from Aeneas, puts his arms around his leg, and Aeneas doesn't give it. He stabs him. Okay? What's Gollum doing? This is the old AT&T commercial. Reach out and touch someone. Gollum is connecting in this scene with Frodo and Sam. This scene shows us the relation among them. Not brotherly, not friendly, hobbitly. They are the same thing. And Gollum is trying to be one with them. And what happens? For a fleeting moment, could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld an old, weary hobbit, shrunken by the years that had carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, in the fields and streams of youth, an old, starved, pitiable thing. But at the touch, Frodo stirred and cried out softly in his sleep, and Sam was immediately wide awake. First thing he saw was Gollum, pawing at Master as he thought. What does he mean by pawing? Trying to get the ring. Hey you, what are you up to? Nothing, nothing. Nice, Master. I dare say. Where have you been to? Sneaking off and sneaking back, you old villain. Gollum withdrew himself. Multiple meanings. One, he just physically pulls back. What else does it mean, though?
He's got one again.
He's fully Gollum. That is, the part that was reaching out gets swallowed up, and a green glint flickered under his heavy lids. Whenever you see that green glint, nothing good is going to happen. What has Sam just done? Ruin the moment? Was this Gollum's possibility for cure? It is a possibility for the begin.
Be ensured that it won't happen.
Yeah.
So Gollum leads them off to Shelob. And we will pick up with the choices of Master Samwise. We'll actually get through the rest of this on Tuesday because we're going to skip an awful lot. All right.